The House That Eats, a Snow White Horror Tale. One day, Snow White was exploring the enchanted forest, gathering herbs and flowers. As she knelt by a brook, a raven with glossy black feathers landed beside her. It had a small piece of parchment tied to its leg. Curiously, Snow White untied the note and read it aloud. To the fairest in the land, an invitation to a house so grand. Come before the moon is high, enter if you dare, or else goodbye. Snow White felt a strange urge to find this mysterious house. As the sun set, she ventured deeper into the forest, the shadows lengthening around her. As midnight approached, Snow White came upon a clearing. In the center stood a house unlike any she had seen. It was tall and crooked, its dark wood blending with the night. Vines crawled up its sides, and the windows gleamed like sinister eyes. The door creaked open, as if welcoming her in. Despite the chill running down her spine, Snow White stepped inside. The door slammed, shut behind her, making her jump. Inside, the air was heavy and still. Snow White walked down a long, dimly lit corridor. She had the unsettling feeling that the walls were alive. They seemed to pulse and breathe. Shadows flitted across the walls, whispering her name, their voices echoing softly. Snow White entered a grand dining room. A long table stretched before her, laden with an extravagant feast. Golden goblets, roasted meats, and ripe fruits glistened under the candlelight. But as Snow White approached, the food began to change, revealing itself to be rotten and foul. A sense of dread filled her as she realized it was all an illusion, a trap set to lure her in. Suddenly, the walls began to close in, and darkness enveloped the room. A low growl resonated through the house, growing louder and more menacing. Snow White's eyes widened in horror as she saw the walls sprouting sharp, jagged teeth. The floor beneath her feet started to crack open, revealing a massive, gaping mouth. The house wasn't just alive, it was hungry, and it wanted her. Thinking quickly, Snow White grabbed a silver candelabrum from the table and threw it into the creature's maw. The house let out a terrible scream, its walls shuddering in pain. Snow White didn't hesitate. She turned and ran, the floor trembling beneath her. She could feel the house's anger, its desperation to consume her, but she didn't stop. Snow White reached the door just as the house's walls began to close in on her. With a mighty push, she burst through the door, falling onto the grass outside. Behind her, the house shuddered violently. Its walls crumbled, its roof caved in, and with a final agonizing shriek, it sank into the ground, swallowed by the earth itself. Snow White lay on the ground, catching her breath, the morning sun beginning to rise. The curse of the house that eats had been broken. As she stood and dusted herself off, Snow White knew she had faced a great evil and won. She made her way back through the forest, the memory of the living house lingering like a faded nightmare. But somewhere, deep in the heart of the forest, the ground still whispered, waiting for the day when the house might rise again. The Curse of the Dark Bloom. In the magical kingdom of Eldoria, there was a garden like no other, the Garden of Eternal Blossoms. Princess Rose, known for her gentle nature and ability to make anything grow, took care of this garden. The flowers, there were the most beautiful in the land, each one blooming with a touch of magic. One day, while exploring a hidden part of the garden, Princess Rose found a strange seed. It was small, dark, and seemed to glow with an unusual energy. Curious about what it might grow into, she planted it in the center of the garden, hoping for something special. By the next morning, the seed had grown into a stunning flower, with petals as dark as the night. It was a sight to behold, unlike anything Princess Rose had ever seen. But as days passed, she noticed something troubling. The dark bloom, as she called it, was draining the life from the other flowers. The once vibrant garden began to wither, and soon the entire kingdom felt the effects. The skies turned gray, and the people of Eldoria grew sad and weary. Realizing the mistake she had made, Princess Rose sought help from her closest friends, the other Disney princesses, Cinderella, Belle, Ariel, and Aurora. They each had their own special strengths, and together they tried to figure out what was happening to the garden. In their search, they discovered an ancient legend about a flower that reflected the heart of the one who planted it. If the person's heart was full of love and confidence, the flower would be beautiful and life-giving. But if there were doubts and fears, the flower would become dark and destructive. Princess Rose understood then that her own worries about the future of her kingdom had caused the dark bloom to grow. She realized that to save her garden and her people, she had to face her fears. With the support of her friends, Rose looked deep within herself and let go of her doubts. She focused on the love she had for her kingdom and her garden. As she did, the dark bloom began to change. Its dark petals slowly turned a deep, vibrant red, and the garden started to come back to life. The flowers regained their color, and soon the entire garden was restored to its former glory. The skies cleared, and the people of Eldoria were happy once more. Princess Rose had learned that even in the darkest times, she could find the strength to overcome her challenges by believing in herself and relying on the love and support of her friends. From then on, the story of the dark bloom was told throughout the kingdom, reminding everyone that the world around them is a reflection of the love and care they give.